And the mom in here is so toxic, terrible, manipulative. When she started having seizures, they put her in an institution for the mentally disturbed. It's a beautiful day! This kid is caught holding the knife. Hello, Becky here. Welcome back to my channel. I have just now decided to do a little reading vlog challenge kind of thing. So I was reading They Never Learn on my e-reader and it returned to the library and I can't find my e-reader, so that's great. I also was physically reading through the e-reader as well, the Out There Screaming, and I was able to download an audiobook for that. I think audio is just going to work better for me right now. I'm enjoying the reading experience, I just need something else. And yeah, I have another physical book I'm trying to read, but that's for another video and I can't grab it right now. So I have these 4 mystery books that I bought like a couple years ago and haven't even opened them yet. So I'm thinking I will do a mystery book reading vlog. Yeah, these aren't mysteries, but we don't know what they are. That's the mystery. I haven't picked which one I'm gonna read yet. This one, I didn't always being a woman, so I'm assuming something got left out of this one. Like I didn't always like being a woman, maybe. This looks like a okay size. Pretty small paperback. Double code. Sheila Gray shrieked down the hall of the mostly sleeping inpatient psychiatric ward. I think these two are both supposed to be the first sentence of the book. So shrieking down the psychiatric ward sounds really interesting, and also another small book. This one is a biography, so I don't know if I want to read that just quite yet, but it's tragic, horrific, hard read, happy ending, and trigger warnings for child abuse and sexual assault. This one is also very short, but I really want to know what this is. It sounds so horrific. I really want to know what it is. And this one is Dr. Bloom waited patiently for an answer. This one doesn't seem very thick, but it is a little bit of a taller book. So these are my 2 tall ones and my 2 shorter ones. So I am curious. I think I'm going to open the one about, it's the thickest one, of course. I'm going to open up the one about didn't always being a woman, because I want to know what that means. So let's open it up together and start our mystery reading journey. Look at this. Rusty. I read that as Busty. Okay. Busty's Story by Carol Gino, author of The Nurse's Story, the dramatic true story of one woman's triumphant fight against illness. Smells like an old book. Looks like an old book. Inside it is written movie The Fifth Floor. I don't know what that means. There is a coffee shop in town that has books and you just like pay a donation, and I think it goes to the Hand of Hope, which helps with homeless people and stuff. And this is Rusty's story from January 1986. And it's January now, so that's cool. For Rusty and the Phoenix Bird and all of us. I didn't always love being a woman. I said like, it's love. So let's dive into this and see if it's any good. There's this thing in the back, special offer, buy a Bantam book for only 50 cents. And by the year 2000, 2 out of 3 Americans could be illiterate. Wow. By the year 2000, we're already 20 years past that. But whenever I see these like special offer things, I want to send that in to the address. If I just send in my name and address, they will send me a catalog. And the author is a registered nurse. So I guess this is a true story, which I said I didn't want, but it sounds interesting. So I'm going to dive in and I will update once I've read a little bit and let you know what I think of it. So I managed to find an audiobook for Rusty's Story. I read the first 4 chapters, which is 66 pages, and now I'm listening to the audiobook. This is just going to slow down my reading so much to physically read this, and I have like 500 other books I want to get to this month. So this says the dramatic true story of one woman's triumphant fight against illness. And I think in the audiobook, the little like tagline thing talks about it being like a misdiagnosis. So Carol, the author of this book, is a nurse and starts working in this nursing home. So she has been hired as like a personal nurse for this guy, and he has diabetes and he's like stopped eating. He won't eat and his family's like, I don't know what to do. So they put him in this nursing home and they've hired her to be like his personal nurse. When she first starts, like it's her first day there, this other woman is brought in on a stretcher from an ambulance, and they're like, she's refusing to go to a hospital, so we brought her here. And this story came out in the 80s, I believe, so this is like 70s 80s time, so things are a little bit different. Copyright 1985. So the story is probably happening like 70s and then 80s kind of thing. So this woman comes in and she's having like a complete meltdown. She's like, I don't want to be here. You guys are terrible people. You're attacking me. I don't want to be here. Blah, blah, blah. She's basically a bag lady. She's dirty. She smells. Her nails and toenails have grown like long and curled up. It's really, really bad. And the head nurse, person in charge at the nursing home, Mrs. Frick, is like, get Rusty, we need Rusty. And Rusty comes out and she's really gentle and calm and kind. Just really deals with this girl. Her name is Marta, this woman. And obviously Carol's watching Rusty, and then this whole thing happens and she's like, okay, well, I'm here to see Mr. Dominic. I can't remember his last name. And just like goes about her business, but keeps seeing Rusty in these situations with people who are having a lot of difficulties. Yes, mentally, but emotionally as well, not just like physical disabilities. And there's one guy at the nursing home who has Alzheimer's and keeps thinking his wife is cheating on him, and he's 80 years old. And Mrs. Frick is like, I need Rusty over here. And they're like, Rusty's talking to whatever his name is. She's like, oh, just ignore that old guy. He doesn't know what he's talking about. And they're like, well, he thinks his wife's cheating on him. And it's like, he's 80 years old. She's 80 years old. She's not cheating on him. Get Rusty over here. And then she's talking to Rusty, this Mrs. Frick lady, and is like, just ignore him. It's not important. And she's like, but the pain is real to him. It doesn't matter that his wife is 80 years old and isn't cheating on him. He thinks that she is, and that pain, the emotional pain, is real. And she's just really super compassionate, sympathetic, empathetic towards these patients. And Carol obviously notices this stuff and kind of starts a friendship relationship with her. And Carol is newly single. Well, I think she's been single for a few years now, but she's got 2 kids and had another female roommate that moved out, and she's talking to her friend and considering getting another female roommate to live with her, to have another adult around, not necessarily to look after the kids. Like, her parents help look after the kids and stuff, so she's not looking for like a live-in nanny, just a companion, a friend. She doesn't want to get married or be in a romantic relationship at the moment. Uh-oh, you dropped your apple. So she's like, Rusty, I would like you to move in with me, because Rusty is living with her mom currently, and her mom is an alcoholic, and the home is just really run down, not a really great place to live. And Carol's like, Rusty, you should live with me. And Rusty's like, well, if you want me to live with you, you need to know my story. And when she was like 15 or 16, she was diagnosed with epilepsy. Carol is meeting Rusty when she's only 19, and Carol is a nurse. Rusty is just like an aide. She doesn't have like the medical training of a nurse. And she's like, you need to know my story about being diagnosed with epilepsy. When she was like 15 or 16, she tried to kill herself. Her doctors didn't tell her anything. The nurses told her nothing. Her parents knew nothing. It was all very like hush hush. Epilepsy is seen like as a really bad thing. No one like in the public really understood it. I don't know how much doctors understood it at that time, but they didn't explain to her like, this isn't going to kill you or anything like that. She was terrified. Every time she had like a grand mal seizure, her parents would look just absolutely terrified. And she's like, I'm going to be a burden to my family and I'm going to kill myself. So trigger warning for that, but obviously she doesn't. And the doctor's like, we're discharging you to an insane asylum, basically, because they're better equipped to deal with you. So that's a chapter I'm on now, where she's talking about being in the asylum. So yeah, this is brutal. And this is a true story. So trigger warnings for like everything. And Marta, the patient that was brought in at the very beginning of the book, is actually like 54 years old, and she's a doctor, but she's an alcoholic. So that's another thing to think about with homeless people on the streets or just down on their luck kind of thing. We think, oh, they can't be that smart or have a good job or whatever. Like, why can't they just work and get a better job? But we don't know the struggles that they're having. Like, Marta is a doctor and she's having delusions and stuff like that because she is an alcoholic and dealing with like withdrawal. So we just can't judge people where they are in life, even when they're at the lowest low. We can't judge and say like, well, if they just got a job, they wouldn't be homeless kind of thing. So that's really interesting, but it is a really tough read too, in the sense of the lack of compassion and care in the medical field and lack of explaining the situation to this girl and her parents. So anyways, I got 8.5 minutes left on this reading sprint. So I'm going to keep listening to this and hopefully get this done soon-ish. Finish this and get on to my other mystery books. So I will update later when I know a little bit more and what I'm thinking of the story, but it's interesting so far. Say bye! Hi! So I have been listening to Rusty's story. I am 48% of the way through it right now. And Rusty was like 15 when she started having seizures. And they put her in an institution, like for the mentally disturbed, mentally ill people. Anyways, something happened, but Rusty like had a breakdown and just destroyed one of the rooms in the institution that she was in and like knocked over the chairs and the table and just like freaked out. Next thing she knows, she's heading over to an institution for like the criminally insane, and she's like, so knocking over this table makes me a criminal? Like, I don't get it. And she's like 15, 16, 17 years old. And she's talking about like in this institution, they gave her a shot and they're like, this will help calm you down and you'll get another one in 15 days. You only need it like once every 2 weeks and it's some new medication. And she was like shaking and rocking and couldn't sleep and couldn't sit still kind of thing for like a week or something before the like side effects wore off. And she was talking about her sheet on her bed was plastic and it smelled like urine. She thought she could hear water dripping all night long, and it just turned out that it was just urine from the patients dripping onto the floor. And a lot of the patients are either children that don't have anybody kind of thing or elderly people. And she talked about how they would just urinate and defecate wherever they were. And it was so dirty and there was mice and you could barely eat anything because of all the bugs, and it just smelled like urine and feces everywhere she went. And I'm like, these are the kind of places we're putting people into because they can't take care of themselves, whether they are actually having mental problems and do need help beyond like what could be given outside of an institution, like just mental health stuff. Again, the times. But that wasn't even that long ago. Like, this book came out in 1985. Like, that's the year my husband was born. I was born in 87. It feels like a long time ago, but the 70s, 80s, it's not that long ago for them to be treating people like this. They should know better. And it's just absolutely disgusting and horrifying to read about. I am liking the story enough. Like, I do want to know what happens and find out everything. So I just finished listening to Rusty's story. It was interesting. The updated version that I was listening to on the audiobook was copyrighted 1997, so a little bit newer. This one says 85, so a little bit more updated information and stuff. And if you see the cover, I'll post a picture of it. The cover of the audiobook, it says like a misdiagnosis, and then there's an award on it for epilepsy information. And I think the main thing is that she wasn't misdiagnosed with epilepsy so much as they were putting her in institutions thinking that she was crazy and making it up. What's wild about this story is just the mistreatment of the medical doctors, nurses. They didn't always believe Rusty and what she was saying and trusting her own opinions, especially being, I think she was diagnosed at like 15 and then she's like 20 in the book, so quite young. So it's one thing for the doctors not to quite understand what's going on and stuff and to disregard what she's saying. That's bad enough in its own, but the mistreatment more of the staff at these like asylums and things like that, and just like how they didn't care about the patients or anything like at all, and the abhorrent conditions that they were living in was just heartbreaking and angering, really. There was a couple of good doctors in here, but a lot of them were terrible because they had no money either to go see doctors. The one doctor, I think he was more of like a general practitioner, was like, yeah, come in, we'll talk to her. And he's like, I want to get her in with this top neurologist at this place. And they get her in there to see him. And Carol, who is a nurse, is talking to the doctor, and then Carol's friend and now Rusty's friend are there, and their friend Creed is sitting in the waiting room, and Rusty and Carol are in talking to the doctor, and Rusty's about to have a seizure, and there is like a sequence that happens. Her tongue clicks, and then her neck like goes to the side, and then her eyes roll up. There's this whole sequence of events that Carol has picked up on and knows when the seizure is about to happen, and she tells the doctor, the neurologist, a seizure is going to happen, and he's like, how do you know? And she's like, it's going to happen. And he's like, well, just let me know. And then he's testing to make sure it's not like a psychological seizure, I guess, because sometimes people can have like an unconscious seizure where they're kind of like making it up. So he's like poking her with something sharp, like on the cheek, the arm, the leg, and she's not responding. He was like banging her knee too to check like the reflexes and stuff. And I can understand doing tests like that to see like what kind of seizure is this, what's causing it. But then she starts like going into the seizure, and he just like slaps her across the face and she falls off the table basically. Of course, Carol's like horrified and she's like, what are you doing? And goes to like help Rusty because she's now like full-blown seizure, and the neurologist just like runs out of the room and he's like, I can't handle this is too crazy. It's like, you're a neurologist, this is your whole job. So there's a lot of stuff like that in here, so definitely trigger warnings for like medical things. And when Carol talks to the other doctor that referred them to the neurologist, he was even like, that's not right. He can't be like slapping her, even if it is like a psychological thing, even if it is something else going on, slapping her across the face is not a proper diagnosis or way to treat a patient. Anyways, there were some good doctors in here. And it's also a journey of like Carol learning about like why she's become a nurse and why she cares so deeply about these patients and stuff, and being a healer versus just like a nurse or a doctor, and what it means to be a healer. There is some outdated language in here, like talking about Indians and stuff, but none of it, from what I could tell, none of it was like derogatory or racist or anything. It was just the terms that were used at the time of this writing, because they at one point were talking about like Indian medicine men and healers and stuff. Anyways, I didn't hate this book. It was really interesting and eye-opening for sure, especially during that time. And I am going to pick up the next mystery book later. My daughter asked if she could unwrap them, and I said no, I want to unwrap them as I go to read them, so I'll let her pick the next one and we will move on from there. Okay, Maya, we are planning my mystery books. You said you wanted to open one. Dr. Bloom waited patiently for an answer. Double Code, Sheila Gray shrieked down the hall of the mostly sleeping inpatient psychiatric ward. That would go with the book I just read. And Biography, Tragic, Horrific, Hard Read, Happy Ending. So which one do we want?
This one.
Why that one?
I don't know.
You don't want a horrific, tragic read?
No.
Okay.
This one would go with the other book.
Open her up, show the camera. Get some ASMR in there. Okay, Maya. What is it? Oh. What is it? School Library Journal. Risk Factor, a gripping psychological thriller by Charles Atkins. Copyright 2009, so a little bit newer than the other one. When they found the nurse, she was already dead. Sitting next to her body covered in blood and holding a knife was 17-year-old Garrett, a patient in the psychiatric ward of the hospital. So this is what I get to jump into next. Thank you, Maya.
You're welcome.
There you go. Reading outside. It's a beautiful day. So it is Sunday evening, January 28th, and I am still reading Risk Factor by Charles Atkins. So I'm hoping to finish this weekend. And it does read fairly quick. I have a little under 100 pages left, so I can probably get close to finishing it, if not fully finishing it. It's only 7:40 p.m., so I don't see why I can't finish this today. It does read fairly quickly. And this is a doctor. She's like a psychologist. Our doctor that we're following, Molly Katz, is a psychiatrist. She works on the psychiatric ward of this hospital, and there was a nurse that was killed. And this patient is seen like holding the knife over top of the nurse's body, and he goes into a catatonic state, and they take him to, it's still a hospital, but it's like a detention center, jail, hospital kind of thing, because they believe he stabbed this woman and then went into a catatonic state. And the doctor that we're following is kind of like, I don't know if he could have done it, even though like it seems like a pretty open and shut case. He's standing over the nurse with a knife in his hand and is covered in blood, and she's dead from these knife wounds. How else could it have happened? But then while he is in the other hospital in a catatonic state, can't talk, can't feed himself, doesn't move, nothing like that, another nurse is murdered. So it's like, well, obviously he didn't do that murder. So what is happening? Why are these nurses being targeted? It says like a gripping psychological thriller, but the murders, like, we're not focused on that as much. It's more like what's going on in the mind of these children, these, well, teenagers, and what causes them to become psychotic, to become sociopaths, to become dangerous. to have schizophrenia and things like that, and nature versus nurture. And what I like about this book is a lot of these conversations are happening with another colleague, and right now she's actually having conversations with her daughter who is in college. I think she's 18 in college, and she has like a 16-year-old son at home. And they're just talking about her and her husband divorced when the daughter was 8 years old and the son was 6. So it's been 10 years. And now she's having a conversation with her daughter, like, how did the divorce affect you? If I stayed with your dad, how might things have been different? And talking about how she's different having divorced versus like had she stayed with her husband, she was a nurse and she probably wouldn't have gone back into medical school to become a doctor, things like that. And a lot of this information that we're getting and talking about psychology, those are the really interesting parts, is like the psychology and nature versus nurture, and how did these kids end up this way and stuff, and what are we going to do with these kids, and just everything is told through conversations. She's a third-year resident, so she has to meet with this other doctor to do briefs and talk about what's happening in her job and on the site and stuff like that at the hospital. And there's a really good conversation with that doctor that's like a whole chapter long that I dog-eared. It was just really interesting. It was that conversation about like nurture versus nature and things. I like that these conversations and these thought processes are happening between two different people, and there is a conversation. We're not just solely in the protagonist's head thinking about these things. And I think it's one of those things that you either love or hate in books, but I love getting my information through a conversation. My dog just pawed the camera. So yeah, I'm really liking that, and this book is pretty good so far. I'm going to continue reading, and I will update at the end of this book and when I pick my next mystery book. Say goodnight, Peaches. She's on the back of the couch like she's a cat. Why is it such bad quality? Alright, so I finished my last mystery book, Risk Factor. Now I got 2 more, so you guys have to help me decide. This would be a biography, which is nonfiction, so that would be good to read, because I've been reading a lot of fiction so far. Or this fiction book, Dr. Bloom waited patiently for an answer. So the first book in the mystery books that I read was a nurse. This one's a doctor. This one also has a doctor in it. And this one is a horrific, tragic biography.
That one.
Okay, Maya votes biography.
Biography.
Okay, Dad. They both say biography. So I guess there's no real tie. I'm thinking the biography.
Hard read, heavy read. Oh, that sounds interesting.
Yeah. Because I've read enough fiction books. So let's open this up. This one's from our local Kohl's. I know because it's got the $5 sticker on it.
What?
Cry Silent Tears. The horrific true story of the mute little boy in the cellar. That sounds horrifying. Joe was only 5 years old when he watched his beloved daddy burn to death in a garage fire, and 5 years old when he lost his voice. Left at the mercy of his abusive, violent family and unable to ask anyone for help, little Joe's life turned into a living hell. Ard by his mother's boyfriend, beaten and locked in the cellar, he was fed only on scraps that he was forced to lick from the floor. To drink water, he had to gnaw off the glued top of a bottle, a trick played on him by his brothers. But much, much worse was to come. This is the heartwarming, true story of how an abused little boy overcame impossible odds and grew up into a remarkable man.
Heartwarming?
Heartwarming. This is horrifying. It says horrifying right in it, but I am interested to see what happens.
Can I see the back for a second?
From this. So, trigger warnings for absolutely everything, and I will update when I read more. So it's been a little while since I've updated this mystery reading vlog, but the book that was picked for me like in January was Cry Silent Tears, the horrific true story of the mute little boy in the cellar. So today is March 2nd, I believe, and I'm going to pick this up. This is by Joe Peters. And I will update when I know a little bit more about what this is about, what it's like, what the tone is reading like. And I have been reading a lot of Spy Family recently, so that vlog will come out before this one, so check that out. And I don't have any novels going right now, just decided I'll go with this nonfiction one right now. So I'm intrigued to jump into this one and see what this one is about. because the description on the paper covering this, the mystery description thing, said that it was horrific but uplifting at the end, had a happy ending. So I'm excited about that. So yeah, let's dive into this. I'm just gonna hop in the bath. We just came back from a trip. I am tired. My ribs are killing me. I'm in pain and I'm sore. So I want to have a bath and jump into this one. This lighting is doing wonders for the black circles under my eyes. I'm 2 chapters into this, and the 3rd chapter is called Inferno. So if you read the back of this, it just says, Joe was only 5 years old when he watched his beloved daddy burn to death in a garage fire. So that's what I'm about to read right now. But just the physical child abuse in this from the mother is horrific. It is the worst. She punches him in the face. And he's like 3 or 4 years old. Like just straight up punches him right in the face and causes a black eye and burns his hand on an iron. So definitely not a book to go into lightly. The trigger warnings on this are very, very high for child abuse. And it says horrific true story. And I know it has a happy ending. So that's good. But yeah, definitely a tough read for sure. And the mother in this is just abusive to everybody and an alcoholic. So yeah, it's pretty brutal. I will update when I've read a little bit more. So I am reading Cry Silent Tears. And the mom in here is so toxic, terrible, manipulative, physically and emotionally and verbally abusive. And this boy saw his dad burst into flames, like catch on fire, running around screaming and die. He worked at a garage and somebody like flicked a cigarette butt out and it landed on some gasoline or whatever that was on the ground, or oil or something. And yeah, the dad went up in flames, and this boy is like 4 or 5 years old and watches this. His dad was his only protector from his abusive mom. And that's just horrible. I'm only 58 pages in and it's just like abuse, abuse, abuse. So this is definitely not an easy book, an easy read. Definitely lots of trigger warnings. You can't be on the camera, you're naked. Go find your diaper.
It's a dog.
You gotta show the kitty. That's the wrong side of it. It's backwards. There you go. There's the kitty. Emily Cromwell designs bookmarks. But he ended up going mute from the trauma of not just losing his dad, but then the abuse he got at the hands of his mother and even his older brothers. She had 2 kids from a previous marriage and then had 4 more with Joe's father. I think Joe was the first, and then she had a few more. It says she had 6 kids, but I only remember her having 2 siblings after Joe. But anyways, I can't say. I don't know how trauma works and stuff, but I feel like the trauma of losing his dad was obviously absolutely... You can't hear me talking. The trauma of losing his dad was obviously horrific, but I think it was the abuse from his mom that caused him to end up going mute, because he knew if he said anything or whined or complained about missing his dad and wanting to see his dad, he'd get a beating. So like anytime he thought about talking about his dad or whatever, he knew abuse would be coming. So I think that's what triggered him. At first he was stuttering really bad, but I think that was only like a week that he was stuttering really bad, and then he just went completely mute. Yeah, that's just horrific to think. Like, it's just trauma on top of trauma on top of trauma, because like he was being abused by his mom before his dad died, but now there's no one to protect him, and he was with his dad at the garage because his dad didn't trust the mom to have the baby. And this was like in the 70s or 80s or something, so stuff like this is still happening now, but it was even worse back then. But he couldn't prove that she was being abusive or whatever. It was kind of like he said, she said. He would take him to his work with him all the time. He worked at a garage, and he's like, hey, I'm doing like a dangerous job, stay in his vehicle, his own personal vehicle. And yeah, that's when he witnessed his dad was like stuck under a vehicle. He was working underneath another vehicle, and then everything caught fire and whatever. Just very, very traumatic. But it's just, it's so sad. But when she realized that his becoming mute wasn't just an act to get like attention or something, she was partially annoyed with me for causing her yet more inconvenience and for trying to draw more attention to myself. But I suspect there was a part of her brain that was already beginning to see the possibilities, even at that stage. If I couldn't talk, I couldn't tell any tales. So he wouldn't be able to talk about the abuse that he was experiencing. So this says that it has a hopeful ending though, so I'll check in. Probably won't keep checking in too much through this because it's a lot of trauma. I'll talk about this when things get a little bit better. I'm hoping to read up to page 100 today. I'm on 59 right now. Literally just finished this. Read the last line, closed the book, and hit record. I am so glad I am done with this book and can move on to the next mystery book. This was absolutely devastating. Trigger warning for every single kind of child abuse you could possibly imagine. Times 10. That's what this kid went through. It's horrific. I have no words for this at all. I do not recommend this for anybody to read at all. Nobody should read this. Except for people who work like social services, police officers, anyone who's in a position to save a child out of a situation, they should be reading this book. This took place in the 80s. I think things have changed since then. I don't know when this was written, actually. But I know these horrific things like sex trafficking and pornography rings and stuff, like child pornography, things are still happening to this day. I fully understand that. But I think things have gotten better with believing kids who do come forward and talk about the abuses they are suffering, even within their own homes. I think it's gotten better that way. This is copyrighted 2008. I can't rate this book. I think it is well enough written. It doesn't feel like it was written just as a therapy session to get out all the things that had happened to him onto paper and happened to be published. It felt like it was well edited, well thought out, well written. It wasn't full of like grammar or spelling mistakes or anything like that. It was told in a linear fashion, which when things jump around a lot, especially in memoirs, I can get really confused easily about where on the timeline we are at. But it's just horrific, just absolutely horrific. That's it. That's all I have to say about this book. The note on it talked about it ending on a good note, and it does end on a positive note at the very, very end. Like the epilogue is positive. That's it. That's the only positive part of this entire book. So yeah, just absolutely devastating. But I'm at church. I'm gonna go now inside. Baby was sleeping, and I will talk to you when I pick up the next book. So I am here to open up my last mystery book. It says Dr. Bloom waited patiently for an answer. And then I'm gonna go take a bath and start my new book. Sorry for all the extra noise. Oh, it's a Kristen Hanna book. I haven't read this one. Between Sisters.
Author of Fly Away.
So apparently, I'm in the mood to cry. Sounds like Kristen Hanna's famous for. Tender, funny, bittersweet, and moving. Sounds like every Kristen Hanna book. It's a sister story. So there is the romance, like she's leading up to a wedding, I guess, and then has to reconcile with her sister. Something like that. So I will update later when it's quiet, when I'm not wearing pajamas. Maybe wearing pajamas, we'll see. And when I have read some and know what it's about. So I'm about a third of the way or so through this book. So the book ends here. So anyways, I'm on page 172, chapter 13 of Between Sisters, and I am really liking this so far. We have two sisters. Megan is a divorce lawyer in Seattle, the best of the best, makes all the money. She's 42 years old. And then we have Claire. She's 35 years old, single mother, living with her father. They have different fathers, same mother. She doesn't live with her father, but they own a resort campground area together and both live and work there. And there is a lot of baggage and history between the two sisters, of course. Megan is a divorce lawyer and is dealing with her own loss and heartbreak from her marriage and rejection that she's dealt with in the past with having taken care of her sister. And when their mom failed them, she found Claire's father, and Claire's father, Sam, took Claire in, but Megan felt like she was shunned and not welcomed and rejected. And there's just a lot of history there. And now Claire is getting married and has contacted Megan to tell her, I'm getting married. Do you want to come to my wedding? And Megan is like, I need to go there and stop this wedding. She doesn't know what she's doing. She barely knows this guy. Love is terrible. Marriages don't work. Very cynical. And now she's trying to connect with her sister and stop this wedding, basically. So I think we're going to hit the like really tough parts now where they're going to like talk and work work through all the junk in their lives and everything. If I know anything about Krista and Hannah, it will be really hard-hitting, heavy topics coming up. The one thing I wanted to mention in this is that Claire has a group. There were 5 women. One of them has since passed away. And every year since they were 21 and now they're all about 35, they go to this other lake, not where Claire works, but another resort lake area in, I think, Seattle and Washington somewhere. And even through marriages, divorces, children, they have always gone every year to meet up at this cabin and just have like a week. I think it used to be like a weekend and now it's gone into a full week together. And they do mention that sometimes not all of them could make it every single year, but they've always tried to go, lugging babies and all the stuff that comes with them. And they really have prioritized this time together as friends, as women, being together. And I thought that was amazing. And I want that in my life so bad. I never went to college. I moved around a lot. And I do have a few friends that I'm still friends with from the time I was like 16. I have one friend I've known since I was 9. But we don't prioritize getting together and taking a week off to spend in the mountains or at a lake or at the ocean or whatever, right? And I understand life is busy, life is chaotic. We all have kids now. There's so many responsibilities and things on our plate that it is so hard to maintain friendships. And it's sad. And I wish we prioritized friendships more. And I just so desperately want that. I want a week to myself in a cabin, in nature, go hiking, just be at the beach or a lake or something with water, whether I'm on like the ocean front or in the mountains, it doesn't matter. I just want a week to myself to just reconnect with God, reconnect with nature, reconnect with myself. I want time with my husband and just reconnecting as husband and wife, not as mom and dad, not as parents, but as husband and wife. I want time with the whole family where we just get to do family things together, which we are going to a family camp in June, which will be really fun. And this will be our 3rd year going now. But that's with a lot of different families. It's still good though. And we really enjoy it. And then I want a time with friends, just a week, even a long weekend, like 4 days, where we just hang out and have fun and laugh and talk and just sit together and read books. Or like me and my one friend both crochet. So we could like watch a movie and crochet or whatever. Or we could even just, again, quietly sit and do our own things, but just be around each other. Would be so amazing. I don't have a sister, so I don't know about the difficulties of sister relationships, but I have a feeling this one will be really good once they stop running away from their problems and their feelings and confront them and talk to each other and connect with each other will be really good. And yeah, I just really want that friendship. People you can lean on that are not your romantic partner to help you through those difficult times with your romantic partner, difficult times with your children, with life, with career, whatever it is. We need friendships to help us get through that. And I have relied on internet to be my biggest social engagement in the last few years, and that is not good. I am here to finally wrap up this mystery vlog. I started this back in January. It is now May 25th. And by the time you see this, it's June. So it's been a while with this vlog. I finished this book today, and it's really hard to talk about without talking spoilers. So I'm going to wrap up this vlog here and then talk about spoilers for this book at the end if you want to stick around for that. In this mystery book reading video, I have read 4 books for this. I bought these mystery books like several years ago and just haven't had the opportunity to pick them up yet, and most people buy them and open them up right away. I like to wait and have that anticipation and surprise. So the first book I read was the story of the nurse who met this young girl, and I am really struggling to remember her name right now. She met this young girl who had been suffering with seizures and was working in a care home helping out the elderly, and Carol, the nurse, picked up on just how compassionate she was and wanted to learn more about her. And we learn the atrocities that this young woman went through, starting to have seizures around the age of 14, 15 years old, grand mal seizures, and this was back in, I think, the 70s-ish. So I had to go upstairs and deal with a crisis, with the dog barking outside, and I don't know what I was talking about, or exactly where I left off, but this nurse's story, and learning about how the medical professionals and system completely failed this young girl while going through one of the scariest times of her life, having these grand mal seizures and not knowing what was wrong with her, and having no idea if she would even survive this affliction. So that story was a true story. And then I went on to Risk Factor, which also dealt with a doctor. and working in hospital, but this one was a fiction book, and our main character was in her 4th year of residency of becoming a doctor and was going between working on the psych ward and doing her rounds in the ER, and there was somebody who was murdering nurses on the psych ward, and they caught this guy holding a knife. He was caught in the hallway covered in blood after this nurse was killed, holding this knife. And after that, and being accused of it, of course, because, I mean, it seems pretty obvious, he went into a catatonic state. And he was unable to move or talk or anything, and not able to defend himself or explain what happened or anything like that. In the vlog, I talked about how there was some really interesting conversations about psychology in this book that happened through conversations, through dialogue, that I really liked. But beyond that, it wasn't super memorable. I don't even remember who was doing the murders or how it all wrapped up. But it was good while I was reading it, and there was some really interesting conversations. I like when topics like that are explored through dialogue and conversation. And then I read the Cry Silent Tears by Joe Peters, which was absolutely devastating. I was watching a YouTube video from 12 years ago because I wanted to see who this Joe Peters guy was. Was he still alive? What was going on with him? He does talk about his story and how it was originally written as a therapeutic experience, and his psychiatrist said that he needed to publish it because his story was so powerful and it would be a good tool for those who are working like his psychiatrist in this field, and people who work closely with children should read this book to learn more about how to recognize abuse when it is not so obvious. And that is how his book ended up being published. So that book is a very tough book, and I do not necessarily recommend it. It has every possible trigger warning you could imagine for child abuse, and probably some you wouldn't even fathom. It is a very tough read. And then I just ended it off now with Between Sisters by Kristen Hanna, and this came out in 2003, I believe, and this is like the newest of the 4 mystery books that I read. So Between Sisters is a novel about 2 sisters who had a falling out when the younger sister was about 9 and the older sister was 16, and they have not had a good relationship since then, and now they are 42 and 35, and the younger one is getting married for the first time ever and calls her sister just to let her know. And her sister's like, okay, this is a bad idea. You haven't known him very long. And she basically has a meltdown at work. Megan is a very successful divorce attorney and had an encounter with one of her client's ex-husbands that did not go very well and caused a lot of post-traumatic stress and was basically forced to take time off. So Megan unexpectedly has about 3 weeks off of work and is able to go visit her sister Claire, who lives in a small town about 2 hours from her. So Megan has the time to go and talk to her sister, find out about this fiance, and even help plan the wedding. I mentioned that I believed some hard conversations were going to come up and it was going to be very good and impactful, and that is part of what I want to talk about in the spoiler section. But all I will say here is that, like most Kristen Hanna books, it was fairly emotional and tense and difficult at some points to read, but this one did not make me cry, but I was close to crying. It was very emotional, of course, like is typical with Kristen Hanna. It is not historical fiction. It takes place in the early 2000s when it was written, so it's historical fiction now, but it's not written to be historical fiction. I don't have a rating for this book. A 3.75? 4 stars? Not a 5. Wasn't my favorite, but it was good. And it was more about the sisters and not as much about romance, even though there is romance in it. So I am going to wrap this up here. Thank you so much for watching. Let me know in the comments down below if you ever buy these mystery wrapped, brown paper wrapped books based off of first sentences or just a few descriptor words. Have they been successful for you or not? These ones weren't bad. They weren't terrible, so that's a success. Thank you for watching. Like, comment, subscribe, all of that good stuff. I appreciate all of the support that I get, and I will talk to you next time. Bye! So, if you've stuck around, you're here for the spoiler part of Between Sisters. So, of course, this book is dealing with some very difficult topics. There is the relationship between the older sister Megan and her younger sister Claire, which at some points feels more like a mother-daughter relationship than a sister-sister relationship, because their mother was very narcissistic and basically abandoned them. Their mother is an actress from a TV show years and years and years ago, and is still very much feeling like she is a superstar in the public eye. Everything is about her, everything is dramatic, and she doesn't really have time for her kids. When her daughter Claire calls to tell her mother that she is getting married on a Saturday, which is like a week from this phone call, because her mom never returned to phone calls before that, and to be fair, she has been engaged for like a month, but still, she tells her mom, I am getting married, and her mom said, I have a hair appointment that day, and it is very hard to get it in with this guy. Can you get married another day? You know, like, just move the wedding. Very much like that. When Claire was 9 and Megan was 16, their mother left to go on this audition for this show and never came back. Of course, it is very difficult for a 16-year-old to take care of a 9-year-old and be able to financially support them. And then social services was starting to come around, and Megan did not want them to go into the foster care system and be split up. So she tracked down Megan's father, Sam, and called him up and said, you need to take Claire. And Sam didn't even know that he was a father. Him and their mother had gotten married, and one day he went out. You know the story of like the dad going out for milk and never coming back again? He went out to like get milk and came home to an empty house. The mother left with Megan, and she happened to be pregnant and never told him. He waited for her, looked for her and stuff, but after about a year he was like, I can't do this anymore, and moved on. And he had never had any other kids, didn't know what it was like raising kids or anything. So when Megan called, he accepted Claire into his life immediately and even took Megan in. But Megan and Sam did a lot of fighting because he's dealing with a 16-year-old for the first time ever in his life. Going from no kids at all to a 9 and 16-year-old is quite a lot. And Megan had been such a mother figure in Claire's life for so long, she was fighting with Sam, feeling like Sam was not making the best decisions for Claire. And he is like, I am the father, I am the parent, you have to let me make these decisions. And Megan ended up feeling rejected, and Sam had told Megan, either you let me be the father or you can leave, and Megan chose to leave. But she also took on that rejection upon herself, and Claire was so attached to her sister and loving her sister so much, kept asking for Megan, like, I want Megan. And Megan felt like it was better for her just to cut ties and leave. So there was that rift between them, and Claire felt abandoned. So of course, both sisters have a really hard time forming intimate relationships with men. And even just with anybody, accepting their love as a friend, as a father, as a romantic partner. It's very hard when you have been rejected like that. I want to talk spoilers, but I won't get into all the details. You can read the book, obviously, for that. We were also following a third character in here named Joe, and you're not sure until about halfway through how he's quite related to everybody, what his part of the story is, how he's going to fit into all of this. When we meet Joe, he's been on the run for the past 3 months, and he is walking, hitchhiking from town to town, and getting odd jobs here and there. He looks very rough. He's got long, like disheveled, dirty kind of hair. His clothes are ratty. He looks like your typical transient that isn't staying around and you don't want in your town kind of thing. There are a few storylines in here where you know there is a lot of heartbreak, a lot of heartache, and some very difficult emotional conversations need to be had in this book. And you, as the reader, myself, I wanted to hear this conversation between Claire and Megan where they hash out all of the things that wounded them as children, as young adults, how they've wounded each other for the past X number of years, and hopefully coming to some kind of reconciliation through that, at least having healing, if not a tight bond again. So I wanted to see that conversation between Claire and Megan. Another conversation that would have been really good to have would have been between Megan and Sam, Claire's father, and the hurt that was there with Megan leaving and feeling rejected by Sam. And then a conversation between Joe and his former in-laws. I talked earlier about how Claire had this group of friends, and every single year since they were 21, they have gone to this lake together. They spend all of their time together. They're all from this little town. They do everything together. They're best friends. And there were 5 of them, and now there are 4, and one of them has passed away. And it takes you quite a long time to realize that she has passed from cancer. You can kind of assume that's what happened, but they don't come out and say it until near the end of the book. And it turns out that Joe is the brother to one of these in the group. They're called the Bluesers. He's the brother to one of the girls, and he was married to the one that had passed away. And you also find out, this is the big spoiler part, is that he was a doctor, and he was one of the best neurologists, I think, oncologist, doctor, and he essentially did the assisted suicide. That word is never used in the book, but euthanasia. He helped his wife pass when her body wasn't 100% ready to go. He helped put her out of her misery. She was suffering and in just so much agony, and he made that call. And then he went on trial, of course, to, I don't know, I think it was like manslaughter or something, they considered it. And he was acquitted. So he was not found guilty for it, but he carried that on his heart, on his conscience for a very long time, and was running away. For the past 3 years, he had been on the run trying to escape his guilt and never wanting to touch medicine again and go through all of that. He ends up back in the small town where his wife is from, where the Bloozers live, where Claire is, and his father-in-law is also a doctor, like a general practitioner, family doctor in that town. And he says, I need to go on my healing journey. I need to go and speak to my in-laws. And he shows up on their doorstep, he knocks, and the father-in-law opens the door and he's like, Joe, you're here. I heard you were back in town. I'm so glad you're here. And the wife is in the background like, who's there? And he's like, you'll never guess who's here. And then that's it. Door closes. We go on to the next scene with Megan or whoever. And I'm like, okay, flipping through. And then the next time we see Joe, he's back at home and he's like, yeah, that conversation was good. And I was like, what? How can you just not have that as part of the book? How is there no part of that conversation shared at all? How do we get closure for what he did and how he's feeling and how his in-laws would have been affected by losing their daughter, technically at the hands of their son-in-law, who is also a doctor that treats patients like her? Why don't we get that conversation at all? So I'm like, okay, that was upsetting. And then we have a few snippets of conversation between Claire and Megan being like, this is difficult. Why is there so much behind us? And we get their inner monologue as well, thinking about how there's these different things between them and it's hard and difficult and they're kind of walking on eggshells sometimes, whatever. But there's never that sit down moment where it's all hashed out. It's all brought to the surface where they're yelling at each other or crying or just fighting it out somehow and then falling into each other's arms, crying and making up and all this stuff. For me, there was never that emotional conversation that worked through the conflict of their past and all of this history at all. There's just snippets of it. Even between Megan and Sam, like I said, there's just little snippets of it here and there, and you can see it slowly getting better. You can see them slowly kind of edging around these conversations and dipping their toe in, which is more realistic, I guess, but I feel like there was never that conclusion of a good conversation to help start on the journey of healing from all this brokenness in the past. It just felt a little too much on the edge. And that was upsetting. And then one last little spoiler part here at the end that I want to talk about. Claire gets married and they're on their honeymoon, and her husband, Bobby, is a country singer, but he's never had that big break. And their mom, like I said, is semi-famous, and she gets him a meeting with somebody in Nashville. They go to Nashville, things are looking good, they're like, yeah, we like your sound, all this stuff, and it's decided that he has to stay in Nashville for a little bit, and Claire is going to head back home to, work at the resort and take care of her daughter, who is 6, and she ends up calling Megan from the airport, and she said, I'm at the airport, I just flew back from Nashville, I don't know where I am, I don't know why I'm here, I don't know how to get home. And Megan is like, okay, find a taxi, don't drive, here's an address. And she's like, I don't know what's going on. And then she kind of comes back to it and she's like, oh, I'm sorry, it was a long flight, I'm just under a little bit of stress. And Megan says, no, you're coming to my house now. And the taxi brings her there, and Claire kind of just brushes it off. There was one scene earlier on before the wedding that she sees the family doctor, which is Joe's father-in-law. And she's like, yeah, I get headaches, I'm tired, blah, blah, blah. She gets a checkup every year. He's like, you're a little bit early. She's like, yeah, I need birth control. And that's kind of it. That's all we hear about her health. She gets headaches once in a while, right? Kind of normal, typical stuff. And her sister's like, I've been under a lot of stress before. She's a lawyer. She went to school for how many years to do that? Like, she knows what stress is. You never forget your way home. You never get that, a panic attack. Claire says it's a panic attack. And Megan's like, I've had panic attacks. You don't forget your way home, kind of thing. And they go to the hospital, and it turns out that she has a brain tumor. And Megan is very much the kind of person who's in control all the time, and she's gonna fix it, and she has money, so they're flying all over the country, going and getting like 30 different consults, and all of them say the same: it's inoperable, there's nothing we can do, try radiation, it might shrink, it could maybe possibly be operated on, but you're wasting time by flying around the country trying to find the best neurosurgeon. No one's gonna operate on this. So they finally finally make it back to Seattle and decide to do radiation. So at the very end here is her journey, and it's not necessarily cancer. We don't know what the tumor is, if it's benign or not, and all of the doctors said it doesn't matter if it's cancer or not. With a brain tumor, it's deadly. It's going to cause a lot of problems. The only good thing is if it's not cancerous, it's not going to spread to the rest of the body, right? Where cancer could potentially spread. So that's the only kind of positive of it not being cancer. So the one thing I wanted to talk about here is there's a scene at the end. I'm not going to tell you if she survives or has surgery or not, but the doctors tell her you need to put your affairs in order. And she is saying bye to her dad and her daughter. So heartbreaking. Her new husband that she's been married to for less than a month. All her blueser friends. She's saying her goodbyes, getting her affairs in order. And she tells Megan, if something happens to me, please take care of my daughter. Allie needs a good aunt in her life. And Megan is the strong one. She's the one who's like, you can't leave. We're going to fight this. We're going to beat this. You're going to be okay. And she's not willing to accept Claire dying, right? And she just kind of looks at Claire and says, she's going to know that you were the best mom. And I was like, yes, thank you for saying that, Megan, because it always drives me crazy when you're reading a book like this or watching a movie or something and the person is dying and they're trying to have this moment with their loved one and the loved one just refuses to accept that they're going to die. I'll put it in the context of me as a wife. Say I was in the hospital on my deathbed like that and I'm telling my husband, and we're at an age, like she's only 35, right? And her husband's 37. So he's at an age where he could get remarried again and have like a whole life with somebody. If I'm on my deathbed and I'm telling my husband, like, I love you, take care of my kids, make sure they always know I love them, our kids in this case, and when you're ready, I want you to know that you have my blessing to remarry. It's always upsetting when the partner is like, no, you're gonna survive, you're gonna live, you're gonna fight this, I can't go on without you, I can't live without you. That's all romantic and sweet and everything, but it's also upsetting because it's like you're not hearing what the person who's dying, you're not hearing their last wishes. You're not listening to them, and that to me is upsetting. I don't want to die. I don't want to leave behind my children and my husband and the rest of my life. Yeah, it sucks. And if the roles were reversed, it was my husband. Like, no, I don't want to lose my husband. But if he's telling me on his deathbed, his last wishes, I'm going to deny him that because I don't want him to die. I think it's so frustrating. If I'm the one who's dying and I'm saying that and you're just ignoring it, it's frustrating. I just want you to acknowledge that I want my children to be taken care of. I want you to acknowledge that I love you and I'm releasing you to be with somebody else. That it's okay to move on. You're not dishonoring me or our marriage or whatever. You know, I want to know that you know that, and I want to know that you hear me. So I love that Megan could have fought back and said, no, Claire, no, no, no. You're gonna live, you're gonna survive, you're gonna be the best mom ever to Allie, all this stuff. She could have said no, but she just looked at her sister and said, yes, I will take care of your daughter. Yes, I will treat your husband well and love on him and let him know that he is still welcome in this family. Yes, I will let Allie know that she had the best mom. All of this stuff. And I just love that. I was like, yes, thank you for acknowledging Claire's last wishes. That is amazing. And I love that. So I'm so glad that Kristen Hanna did that in this book and included that moment. For not having all those conversations in there, she included this moment that I was really just so very thankful for. And I'm gonna stop now because this video is gonna be way too long. So thank you so much for watching. Comment down below if you stayed for the spoiler part of this. What do you think about books and movies and stories that have this story where somebody's dying and the person closest to them is just not willing to acknowledge it? And I totally understand that. That is legit. I understand that feeling, the denial, right? The stages of grief. That happens even before a person has passed. There's that denial of like, you're not going to die. I totally understand the denial part of it, but sometimes we just have to swallow it and acknowledge what the person is saying to us. Grief is a very difficult thing to go through, and we grieve even when people haven't actually passed. There is so much to grieve in some relationships, but comment down below your thoughts on that. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in another video very soon. Bye!